Hi there, and welcome back to the show. Today on the show, we have Sharel Omer. He's an Israeli entrepreneur whose passion for personal connections and building relationships has made him dedicated to bring the consumer voices power to brands and organizations. He's the CEO and co-founder of Affogata, a
Mhm.
leading consumer intelligence platform that enables brands to be truly customer obsessed by bringing their customers' voices to the right teams in the organization. Previously, he was the CEO and co-founder of Community 360, a social media management and intelligence platform, which has helped thousands of marketers and small businesses increase their ROI from social media activities. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So something I noticed is that a lot of people who start businesses in the social media space usually have significant time in this space. How did you find your journey to develop this passion for social media?
100%. I've been passionate about building relationship and connecting with people. I'm the kind of person that if you go to an event, will know who is the person for me to talk and interact and build relationship, but in a very organic kind of way.
Hmm.
So I introduce myself and I say, we have this challenge, what do you think? And I'm always that kind of guy who's passionate about relationship and touching others and learning from others, right? About 15 years ago, I was working in a startup that made me travel a lot to the US for different conferences, usually social conferences, marketing conferences, etc. And I got the opportunity to interact with amazing people to get advice from, like Seth Godin, Chris Brogan, and others. And people are very approachable. And it made me think about how to keep relationship also when you're not all the time in the US,
Hmm.
right? And it was the beginning of Twitter and beginning of Facebook, and but I saw in those channels a great way to interact with people and to build relationship. And I think that has been my passion ever since. How can we take building relationship on the open web in general and enable it to build strong, lasting, healthy relationships. And this is how we got into that process.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Are you a fan of specific conferences?
Well, Blog World back in the day was very meaningful to me. The next web is also something that I'm very passionate and happy to attend. But in general, it doesn't matter. Even those big marketing corporate events were meaningful. I think it's
Hmm.
all about meeting the right people, and I think that good conference is a conference that good people are attending, and you get inspired by people. And I've been privileged to interact and engage with a lot of amazing people and learned a lot from them, right? For example, Guy Kawasaki was,
Hmm.
met him and build a relationship and things like that. So I think it's very meaningful. And that inspired me to start thinking about building a startup in that space. And that was actually Community 360. And that was about 10 years ago when it was purely on social, very focused on Twitter. And what we did back then was basically helping very, very small businesses like coffee shops and professionals, designers, lawyers, etc., to interact better with their community. For example, we analyzed all of the relationships that people talk with each other on Twitter. And you can say, for
Hmm.
example, who are your influencers? Which was back then was relatively innovative. What is an influencer? Who are your
Hmm.
top fans or top engaged members? Uh, who are the people that engage, you should follow when they follow you and don't follow back, what content to share that interests your community, etc. So back in the days we talked about how to take technology, analyze relationship, and then help small businesses who doesn't have time or doesn't have the experience to understand how to build relationship with their community, right? And that was the beginning of a community, and we've been doing it for 7 years. It was a bootstrap company, which is also something that we're very proud of. We ran for several years. We had millions of small businesses that used the application and profitable. And then we extended from Twitter also to Facebook and to
Hmm.
Instagram, etc. But we always felt like this is not big enough market, if you will,
Hmm.
because it was very hard. As social media grown, it became more and more hard to buy or to bring small businesses without payment.
Hmm.
In the past, Twitter was very open, very viral. Also, Facebook, you can do a lot of automation, things like that. And as social became more and more closed because of everything that happened with the election, etc. So eventually, all of our marketing tactics didn't work. So we
see.
need to pivot, and then we pivoted about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, into Affogata, which is basically taking the same passion about building relationship on social and to the next level. We started working with big brands and started looking not only at social media but the open web at large. For example, app reviews, Google Play, App Store, all kind of review sites like Trustpilot, BBB, etc., articles, and started building more assets into what now evolved into voice of customers, into taking voice of customers, of brands, and understand the narrative and communicate it into the different stakeholders in the organization. And this is what we call now consumer intelligence. Now, the challenge here is to understand what is a narrative, because as we all know, there's a lot of I would call it fake news, bots, narrative which is manipulated. So you need technology also to understand what is the narrative and if something is organic or not. So, for example, we had companies that did IPOs and would worry about what people would say about their stock. Or crypto world has become very massive in that area of voice of customer. Almost most of the trading insights are being done on the open web for crypto. There's a lot of communities that push it to each direction. Reddit rose dramatically. So we see, in my experience of many years, we've seen a lot of shift in the way that entrepreneurship and technology evolved with voice of customers. Nowadays, we work with some of the biggest brands in the world, in the fintech, gaming, direct to consumer, etc. And we enable them to connect to their voice of customer in real time and really understand the narrative. For example, if a gaming company now launches a new game, they want to understand as fast as possible if people like the new character, if people like the new screen, the new color, if the new stage is hard or is it's harder than previous or easier than previous, etc. And we get this data from the open web, analyze it, and provide it as an insight to the team, for example, the product team, the analyst team, etc.
So the open web includes things like Facebook, Instagram, Trustpilot, like all these major websites.
Yeah,
What about more
Reddit.
like what about like more niche forums like Reddit or like private forums?
Yeah, 100%. So this is also something we're doing. For example, in the gaming industry, Discord is very strong. So we also integrate with Discord, with vanilla forums, which is also very strong in the world of gaming, and also niche blogs, etc. So the more we expand to different verticals, the more we take data, and basically our mission is kind of giving the brands a summary of their voice of customers as real time as possible, so they can react to the message and what's being said about them and interact based on it. For example, let's take the Robinhood case, right? So Robinhood was an interesting case. All of the chatter was mostly on Reddit. It was exploding. No one was looking into Reddit in Robinhood, and Robinhood stopped trading those stocks, and then they communicated to the world, we stopped trading to this stock because of this and that excuse. Now, it doesn't matter what the excuse was, the community immediately backfired with this is not true, stop using Robinhood, etc. Robinhood didn't really listen to what people are saying, didn't understand the narrative, continued with their message, and eventually it blew up in their face several times. So, and this is just one example of many. We now live in a world that we call a product-led world. There's a lot of VCs and a lot of entrepreneurs talking about it. The product needs to sell itself. And it sells itself by people talking about it online. Now, the problem is that unlike focus group or surveys, brands cannot control what people talk about them. So
Right.
they need to be proactive in the ecosystem. And this is one, when you mentioned us, you talked about customer obsession, right? What is customer obsession? I think that Amazon was the first one to really focus on that. But basically, it's being proactive to the market, reacting in real time, customer obsession in the broader sense. And I think that we are one of the platform that innovating this field and taking it to the next level.
I love customer obsession as a cultural value. I think yeah, you're right. It is Amazon who started it. I worked at Uber, and then Uber adopted it, and then I started my own
Uh,
company, and we also adopted it because I just feel like it's so core. I feel like
yeah,
it's just I don't even know if it should be a cultural value, but or just like a core part of every startup nowadays.
I totally agree. I think that if you're not, it's like the old days when you develop something and you didn't look at what customers saying. You just develop it, MVP world, etc. We need to be proactive. And nowadays, when there is so much competition going on, and it's so easy to move from, everything is frictionless. You're working at I don't know. You have a website. You want to move to another website site. You just move. You have a crypto wallet, you just want to move to another one, you just move. Everything is seamless, everything is fast. So unless brands and companies and startups really listen to voice of customer and react on it, they will eventually lose.
Hmm.
Um, uh, and as I said before, it's very, very not trivial to be customer obsessed. And I'm going to share some of our experience of what we've seen about why being customer obsessed is hard. So first of all, it's hard because there are so many places that customers potentially talk about you or your market or your competitors that it's not humanly possible to take all of the data and put it in one place and read it. You don't have the context, you don't have, so that's one thing. Another thing is that there are a lot of brands with common names. For example, there's the app, Amazon, right? So that could be also Amazon or Apple. So if you want to know what people talk about Apple and just go to search Apple, you get a ton of things that are not relevant, right? So it's not trivial to get the right data. So that's another thing that is a challenge to be customer obsessed. Another problem is there's a lot of versions and subversion and sub products, and you need to understand what people talk about. Are you talking about the new release, the previous release, this product, that product? Because the data is unstructured. And the third thing that is also seen as a problem is, in order for the company to be customer obsessed, it's not just about customer support answering fast
Hmm.
or product team looking at their support tickets. It's about really the entire organization being connected to voice of customers. So you need, for example, IT teams to be connected, and support, and product, and sales. Everyone need to be connected, and it's not trivial. In organization today, everybody are connected to a BI, right, an internal data source, but not really to an external data source in the broader
Hmm.
sense of it. Um, so this is what you've seen. It's very hard to be customer obsessed, and this is kind of our mission at the moment with Affogata.
It sounds like it's technically very intensive. If you had to have connections,
Yeah.
monitoring multiple sources, and then making sure you're
Yes.
talking about the right entity in having the right entity in mind, and after that, I guess funneling it all in digestible manner.
100%. I think that it's not just the amount of data and the sources, it's about taking unstructured relationships and structure it in a way that makes sense. Now, Reddit relationships are different than Twitter relationship, and are different than Instagram, and are different than
Hmm.
Trustpilot and App Store, etc. But for the end customer, he needs to understand what is the narrative. Do they like it? Do they hate it? Is it quantified or not? So that's one challenge. Another challenge, which is also huge, is understanding what is the correct narrative. For example, there's a lot of spam and bots and fake accounts,
Right.
automated statuses and things like that. So we actually developed a technology, a very deep technology in Affogata that enables us to filter out spam and fake accounts and bots. For example, we work a lot in the gaming industry, and in the gaming industry, it's very massive. Also in fintech, there's a lot of bots, and so in order for you to really understand what is the problem with your product and to improve it, you need to first of all take all of the data in real time, which is also a challenge. Not everything is in real time. The second thing is to filter out the noise, and then understand what's the narrative. And then what we also do in Affogata is quantify it, give it a score between 0 to 10. So we can tell you, for example, what people think about your usability, ease of use, performance, stability, or specific things like your latest version, a specific character that you entered, etc.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm. And how does a company go about choosing which sub entities of their brand they want to track? For example, Apple probably wants to track a very few number of like
mhm,
products, but imagine a platform like Amazon for their Amazon Basics brand has a
yeah,
ton of products.
yeah.
Which is the idea that they track all of them?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would add also to this complexity languages and countries,
I
because
see.
there are a lot of also languages and countries that people try to interact, and sometimes there's different culture. And out of all of this noise, you need to create the narrative. So what we're doing in Afogata is actually working based on verticals. For example, a vertical of fintech, vertical of gaming, vertical
Okay.
of direct to consumer, etc. And to each vertical, we already have the best practices of what's commonly being used and what commonly move the needles in those kind of verticals. What make people churn, this, and that. What people make renew, this, and that. So we try to help the brands. That's one way. Another way is that actually we have a very, very smart search capability. So you actually can search for specific brands or specific topics or things that interest you, and just get the data and get a daily mail about it and a dashboard and a report, etc. We're very proud of everything being automatic, and you can just get all of the data in real time. And I think that what Afogata is doing is basically related to the future and what's happening in the world today. Uh, um, uh, I think that nowadays, I said it as a joke internally, but it's getting more and more serious. That history used to be written by the winners. Now it's written by the people that make most noise in social media. Uh,
I'm familiar with that concept.
yeah, and that's something, people just control narratives, right? We had an example of working with one of the biggest brands in the United States, and they were sure that there is a narrative that's being pushed by unorganic sources about
Okay.
them being not equivalent with employees and giving minimal salaries and things like that. It was a huge, and we actually interacted with the CEO of one of the biggest brands to analyze it and to tell them, listen, you're right. We see all of the people that talk about this narrative are actually, have just a few followers. All of them share the same content. They are friends with each other. They don't have any really impact on the world, yet they talk about this. And eventually it shows some kind of a narrative going. Now, the problem happens is when a narrative goes online on social, and then traditional media picks it up and they do an article about it, right?
Right.
Because they cannot tell if it's true or not or fake or
Right.
not. So they see a narrative and they just write about it and talk about it. And very rarely they actually look into the data and say, wow, is this real or not? And this is the war that we call on fake news and narrative manipulation. And it goes to a lot of places in businesses, but also with countries and politics, etc. And it's really like a whole ecosystem of understanding, controlling and manipulating narratives, if you will. Um, and I think this is kind of I don't know if there is a army for open web, but there is cyber, there is the air force, there is even airspace, I think. But eventually there will be a need for something in that aspects, because it's just controlling. We see, for example, TikTok now, and it's just exploding with numbers that are unheard in any platform that we've seen in the past. Not Twitter, not Facebook, not Reddit, nothing like that. You get a post, and we did some experiments, and we've seen some experiments. You get a post on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, and TikTok, and the reaction on TikTok is in different scales, like thousands more likes, more comments. It's just crazy, and I think that due to evolution of tools in the market, there is a conception that Twitter is just text and it's for maybe more people who are opinion and politics. Facebook is for old people, etc. And Instagram is just for celebs. And suddenly came TikTok, which is real. It's video, it's fun, it's music. Teenagers are seeing it, and just now teenagers, like everyone has a phone, and it become the go-to place for everything. Uh, and it's just disrupting everything. We see, anything that there are trending topics with billions of mentions, just billions coming up out of nowhere, and you can see just millions on other channels, and it's just exploding like crazy. And I think that young people are don't have the tools to understand what they're seeing. For example,
I
we
see.
see a lot of people that get do all of those challenges. Some of them are getting killed, some of them are getting injured and things like that. I think that young people can't just handle all of that load, right? If you do the right hashtag on TikTok and write, a very a specific video about a contest or something like that, it's just overwhelming to the person on the other side, right? And it also gets to a lot of depression and things like that. So it's really becoming an ecosystem and a world of its own. And you need to understand it, and you need to control it, and you need to be proactive about it. We took at Affogata the direction of brands, but we could easily took the direction of politics or direction of governments, etc. We took the direction of brands, and now we're working one of the biggest brands in gaming, in fintech, direct to consumer, etc. We keep. The more there are cases like Robinhood, and the more there are cases like data manipulation, and suddenly stocks go down, or people start to, the more there is a need for a platform like ours. We talk now because we just had a PR about our investment, and in the investment, the position was goodbye focus group, LO Affogata, which basically means there is no need anymore for focus group and asking people. You just get it on everything online. You need to be proactive and build better products through products like ours.
One of the things you mentioned was there's this rise of bot accounts, fake news, and media manipulation. You probably know a lot more about this space than I do, but would you happen to know who's funding all this? Like, what's the economic incentive, or what's the political incentive of these fake accounts?
I'll give you two examples of the things that we know that were investigated, just to give you an idea about it. So, for example, there was a few years ago the issue of do you need to get vaccine or not for the flu? Okay, not even COVID, for the flu. And there's a lot of discussion about it, and a lot of people are very passionate about it. And eventually it was sourced to Russian sources. And the question was, why does a country like Russia want to do something like that? And the answer was to destabilize the essence of the democracy, if you will, to get people to talk about it. So that's one example, which is very far. Another example is, for example, people who trade stocks. So, for example, there was a fake news about a site, a very big company in the chips area, chip, like microchips, and there was a fake article about them failing a test on that specific feature, and it won't release next week like it was expected, and suddenly the stock dropped. And people did shorts and bought and sell stocks, and then immediately the company said, "Wow, this is wrong. This is fake." Until they fixed it, the stock was down for a few hours, and that gave a lot of hackers the ability to do stuff. I think also crypto world has shown us a lot about that area. For example, if someone would go online and say, don't buy this cryptocurrency or buy this cryptocurrency. We see it now, for example, with Elon Musk. But even before, if a person says something, then it affects the trading, it affects the community, and there's people with interest there. So basically, I truly believe that there is a lot of strategies behind it and a lot of ways to do it. The network themselves are doing whatever they can to handle it and to avoid it and to minimize it. But eventually, if there are millions of people that are sharing a narrative, it just flows. I think that also you will be surprised how easy it is to share fake news, because usually fake news sounds that they could be right to some people who want it to be heard, right? And it's not like fake news that I don't know, we found aliens, right? Even that, even that could be right. But for example, let's take a look at flat Earth, for example, or things like that. So people want to believe, like X-Files, people want to believe, and then they share things, and then people say, oh, wow, how can I benefit from this narrative, right? And then they push on it. So I think that we're living in a world that is, I would say that, 50% of what we see online is really the truth, and 50% is manipulated in some way. Sometimes
it's a pretty bad ratio.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I think, but people need to be aware of it. That almost everything you see, you need to think twice. Like literally, every WhatsApp message you get, you should think, wow, this is fake or not? Should I click on it or not? Right? Everyone is doing it now, right? It's not like you don't need to. Everyone knows that you don't click on anything before you double check that it's okay, right? So it's basically each WhatsApp message could be, some kind of a trap, if you will, or something like that. So I think that we're living in quite a crazy world, but eventually I think that the good is more than the bad because it really connects the world into one place, and everyone share something that is meaningful to them across the world. I think that's very meaningful. For example, in Europe there is now the Eurovision, right? I'm not sure if you know it, but it's like it's the biggest song contest in Europe. It's all of the countries in Europe are doing like a song contest once a year. And it has millions and millions of viewers, and it's very big in Europe. And it's all of Europe, right? All of the countries in Europe are having a candidate there, right? Or a participant from their country there. And it's a big show with a lot of buzz, etc. It connects people. People talk about it online. People engage with the songs. People see from all over the world. I like it. I hate this based on hashtags and things like that. So I think that the world is connected, and also I think there are almost no time. Like, I'm here in Tel Aviv. You're in the United States. We talk. There is no time. It's like we are in the same time and we're in the same place. So I think that everything is flattened, and in the world that is flattened, in order to make an opinion, you need to make it really stand out of the crowd, if you will, right? So it's almost a natural evolution to what's coming with the world and how things evolve. You can look at it also, for example, in the climate growth and climate change. Is it real? Is it not? Is it fake? Is it not? Who says this? Who say that? Is it researchers? You cannot believe into researchers, etc. So, yeah.
Have you noticed using your platform if you're able to detect any correlations between sentiment towards certain cryptos or stocks and then their subsequent behavior?
Yes. So this is a great question. We're asked about it a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll give you two examples of what we've seen so we'll better understand. So let's take a look at the Eurovision, for example, right? So the Eurovision is a contest that is being streamed online through the world, and you need to select a winner. And everyone has an app, and you need to select in real time. We did analysis of sentiment of each song in real time, and we suggested who would be the top 10 that goes to the semifinal, okay, and the People's Choice Award. And we nailed almost 80% of what we've seen on the open web and what people voted. So you may say, okay, there's a correlation between what people react and what people vote. But it's not working like that in the world of crypto and stocks, because it's even the other way around. Like, people talk about something, but they act differently. Also in politics, people talk about acting and act differently. So I think that if there is not a real connection between the emotion and what people talk about, usually there won't be a correlation in the real world. And that works both for politics and for stocks and things like that.
When I first came across your website, one of the first applications I thought of was like, I wonder if hedge funds would pay millions of dollars for this technology.
Yes. So, 100%. I think, by the way, that hedge funds have their internal tools.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and they take a lot of data from a lot of places, and I think that now all of the trading is, I think something like 50% or even more is automated in terms of up and down, etc. So it's just crazy in terms of the impact of that. But yeah, you're right. For example, we have customers that talk with us about the impact of Super Bowl campaigns, or companies that want to buy in other companies. So analyze for us what's the voice of customer, is an internet audience for us, etc. So there are a lot of other implications that you can take into consideration. Yeah.
I recognize you're a young company, but have you noticed how COVID might have affected your company's growth?
Yeah, so I think that if we'll take a step back, COVID has accelerated the movement of businesses to be fully online. You can take the regular office or regular, I have a friend that sells furnitures, and he has a store, and due to COVID, you need to go online. And now he sells 3 or 4 times more that he sold before because everything is online and real time. So that's an example of a small business, but everything is becoming online, and everything is become, and the sales processes are becoming more and more online. So I think that what would gradually happen in a few years happened now due to COVID in just a year or so. So that made all of the businesses go online, and that's actually very good news for us, because then more and more businesses are searching for solutions like ours. So during the COVID, we had a massive growth in companies contacting us, and in more customers and more use cases that we've seen. So everyone says that COVID was very bad, and we are very sorry for a lot of businesses that had a lot of issues. But in our case, it was actually spinning our business and taking us and the world to where it maybe should be in a few years now.
Do you find that the ratio of inbound customers is significant, or is it mostly still outbound sales?
You're talking about Affogata?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I think that we our vision is to create a new category, in the sense that we think that there is no yet a real platform
Hmm.
takes all of the voice of customers and put it to all of the stakeholders in one place and connect it to their entire organization, etc. So our mission is to create a new category. We call it consumer intelligence. And the challenge about creating a new category that it takes time to build that category and to get the inbound. So we are focused now on the outbound, and we do outbound very cleverly, if I may say, because we analyze a brand and then we send them an insight based on what we've seen.
I see.
And we talk to an executive and we say, hey, dear executive, have you seen this pick? Are you aware that people are not happy with this game, etc.? It usually opens a dialogue, and how do you know? And it's like internal data usually. How do you know it? And I say, customers are saying about it here and there. So I think that that's major. By the way, what we also do is take data from internal data sources. So, for example, Zendesk, Salesforce, etc. So we combine the internal voice of customer with the external voice of customer into a narrative, okay, and make it qualified. So this is why we believe we're on the verge of creating a new category. And in that sense, we're working a lot with the opinion leaders and talking about our vision and what we want to achieve. Do a lot of evangelism that eventually will put us in a place that will be, a new category. So this is kind of the direction and the vector that we go in, and mostly outbound, but a lot of inbound because of everything that's going on right now in the world.
How long does it take to prepare that report that you would use, to, I guess, to get the attention of
Yeah.
executives?
So it's not about how long it takes, it's about when we see a pick that is compelling enough to send.
I see.
Right? Because we monitor the data and then see, wow, something happened here, a positive peak, a narrative peak, some topic that wasn't there before. We have a lot of tools of anomaly detection, so we can identify suddenly a new word. For example, we work with a lot of insurance companies, and some of them just issued a new insurance, I don't know, for pets or for whatever. And suddenly you see the word pets, or you see the word dog, and it's raising, and it's positive or negative. And then you say, hey, we've seen that you issued a new insurance, and the sentiment about it is good, it's bad compared to the competitors, etc.
Have you done any internal research on whether it's the narratives with positive attribution versus negative attribution that has
100%.
more
100%.
effect?
Both. So we're looking at a lot. Also, we look at competitors. So, for example, we can say your competitor just had a positive peak about X. Maybe you should do something like that, right? And then the competitor can do things like that. Or the other way around, your competitor just had a negative peak, do something positive that you have, so you will take that, right? So the positive and negative are, I think that the positive are potential for growth, and the negative are potential for churn.
I see.
And both of them are important for brands, right? So some just focus on churn, some on growth, some on equally. It depends on the brand and his focus.
So there's no universal rule that can be said like, oh, negative picture or negative sentiment pictures have higher conversion rates.
I think it's based on the strategy of the company.
I see.
I think that in general, in the world of fintech and gaming, first it's the negative and then the positive.
Okay.
But it depends on the culture of the company, and it also shifts from time to time. We try to show through NLP and AI what are the most meaningful things to focus, positive or negative, just the most meaningful. Something now happened,
I
it's a
see.
blast, it's good, it's bad. and it's something that could be meaningful.
So there's clearly a lot of features to this platform. How do you price all of that? Or
So
have you priced all of that?
yeah, sure. So that's a very good question. Um, so we priced based on, first of all, data points that we analyzed. The
I
more
see.
the brand is big and the more data, so that's one thing. Another thing is the number of departments that work with our product. So we work with the product team, with the marketing team, support team, IT team, etc. So each team pay extra, and also the amount of brands and competitor the company has, right? It could be just one product, and it could be a gaming
Hmm.
company with 10 products, right? So, and based on that, we do an analysis of pricing and move forward with the customer.
So do you have a like fixed price point in mind when you like send a contract, or is it like variable based on the number of data points that appears in the future?
It's variable based on the data, but we do initial analysis and make sure in the qualification level that we set we're on the same page with the customer. It can start for a few $1,000s
Hmm.
to anything much higher than that. As we are now in the process of creating a new category, it's equally important for us to bring good brands and expand and not just focus on the pricing per se.
So what would you say is your ideal customer in terms of their company size and their company data points?
So what we learned so far is that companies that has at least there is a what we've seen that there is a point where a brand start to care about what people talk about him, and it usually after he has a certain amount of ARR and a certain amount of employees, so we can say, okay, now I need to listen to what people say about me, because
Hmm.
until that point they usually work on how to build the marketing machine, how to improve the product, the MVP, etc. From our experience, it's something in the area of over 200 employees and
Okay.
over $50 million in ARR. Usually, that's the place where brands start to put their money where their mouth is in terms of
Mhm.
voice of customer and improving their product.
Are you able to draw a clear ROI, or I guess maybe it might be too early, but like ROI analysis for how much your customers pay versus how much they've been able to benefit?
Mhm. Yes, so we have a quantitative score between 0 to 10 to each
Hmm.
one of the topics and searches and the brands that we bring. Uh, there's usually a correlation between the score over time and the impact on the business.
I see.
For example, we can take one brand and compare it to another brand and look at all of the topics and said, for example, in performance, your your competitor is winning you by 3 times or 4 times. So if you focus on performance, you will improve dramatically. You will have less churn, for example,
Hmm.
and that correlates usually with how people react to the product and if they churn or not. So that's one example. But there's always a correlation over time between a score and the business, because at the end of the day, we communicate what the customers are saying. If people say, "Listen, your product is slow and it's slow and it's slow and it's slow," eventually people will churn. But if over time, the score, let's say, was 2, and over time you fix it, you do PR, you add more R&D, etc., and eventually it goes to 7, it will immediately affect the usage of your product.
Do you ever find examples of brands where people don't have a public voice about certain products? For example, like when I grocery shop, I don't really talk about the fruits that I buy. I don't really talk about the chain. I don't really talk about like where I grocery shop since
Yeah.
it feels like a more mundane purchase to me.
Mm.
Whereas I'm more likely to talk about a game I'm playing or a show I'm watching or whatever.
Yes.
Do you find certain categories are not the best fit for your platform, or is that a misconception?
So I think that it depends on the community must have passion, right? For example, let's talk traditional B2B. So you may say in B2B there's not a lot of chatter and people don't have a lot of customers. But let's, for example, take a look at Salesforce or SAP. They have a very vivid and passionate developers community. And in the developers community, there's a lot of chat and a lot of chatter and a lot of people talking about things. Um, so I think that where there is passion, there will be voice of customers, and people
I
will
see.
want to pronounce the name. Mhm.
So, what would you tell to a brand where they haven't yet accumulated that passion to build a more passionate community around their brand? Like, do you have thoughts on what they should do to foster that?
Yes. So I think that first of all, you need to strategize what it means for you to be customer obsessed. Does it mean that everyone in the organization to be connected to customer, just a few people? You want to start with surveys, you want to start with focus group, you want to start with a specific country. You need to strategize how you would like to address customer voice of customer and customer obsession. Usually brands think that it's just customer support. I do customer support, so everything will be okay. But usually that's not the case. Because if you just now, for example, did a major campaign in the subway, right, and people say, wow, this commercial is bad, you won't see it on your customer support, right? And that happens also a lot. So I think that usually brands need to strategize what it means to be customer obsessed, and also strategize where they spend money. Because at some point, spending money on ads doesn't help if people start writing the comments, this is a bad product, don't use it, it's slow, etc. Or if you do billboards or Super Bowl campaigns, etc., at some point it won't be effective as much as because people will say, this is bad, don't use it, etc. So I think it's a correlation of strategizing one end and understanding where your budget is at, and try to focus on how you can maximize the budget you spend with the understanding voice of customers around it.
So it's clear that you're passionate about social media, but if you had to like summarize it into like, I guess 1 or 2 sentences, what would you say your mission in life is? Is it related to social media, or is social media just a stepping stone for a bigger initiative?
So I would say that my why, basically,
The Simon Sinek big why,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah. I recently did a very recommended process that he does. You go online and you understand your why, etc. So I would say that the mission is not specifically social, but really making the world a better place by really connecting between the people, but organically connecting between the people, not manipulated and not narrative, like organically connect between the people and the brands and the industries and the politics, etc. I think that that's a mission that's worth fighting for, because as I said, we really believe that history is written by the narrative, and it's very important to have a clear, true, healthy, I think also positive narrative into the world and into how we see things.
Your LinkedIn profile mentioned that you have 3 kids, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How old are they?
9, 6, and 4.
Are they at the age yet where they use social media?
I keep going back to Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, when he released the iPad, he didn't allow his kids to use the iPad.
Okay.
I think he was right. I think that kids are much less at home when they are online, not just in social but in other places. I think they're a bit naive in terms of how people perceive the things that they post and how it's relatively easy to take advantage of them. I personally didn't allow my kids to have phones at all until they were at 9, something like that. Before that, no phones at all. No social media at the moment to any of them. And it's a fight. I think that there's a lot of education going on in terms of communicate to the kids. But they play, for example, online games. And online games usually have chat and things like that. So you need to communicate to them. And my kids at the moment are in the age that they will do practically anything to get more coins in, I don't know, in some kind of a game, right? It's for them, wow, so...
It's the meaning of life for them.
Yeah, it's life for them, 100%, yeah. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge that every parent needs to be aware of and be proactive in terms of educating his kids and giving them tools to succeed in this world. We as a company see it for many years, how it affects politics, countries, stocks, etc. But it also affects young people and also opinions, by the way. For example, vegan as a team, right? I personally know a lot of people that became vegan because they see things online. Now, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it speeds things, and people need to be aware of the impact of the things they are doing. Also, it gets a lot of kids to being depressed, right? It's just unbelievable. Imagine a kid posting something on TikTok and get 100,000 likes. It doesn't correlate with his real world on the one hand. right? It's not, you get out of the home, no one knows who you are. On the other end, it's just addictive, right?
Right.
So, and you need to have enough. Um, I don't know. Um, you need to be very grounded to not be affected by those likes. Um, and it's a challenging, challenging world.
Is there an appropriate age you have in mind where you feel like you would allow your children to enter the world of social media?
Well, I think that if you look at, for example, um TikTok. So TikTok wasn't that popular 2 years ago, right? And I think it depends on the social network and where people are doing. So I think that, for example, social networks that enables you to consume things but rarely post. I think that would be a better place to start. Uh, Also, places that are more secured in terms of people connecting with them, etc. So WhatsApp could be a good start. Facebook could be a good start. Uh, I think the TikTok and Instagram, I would put it more later in the phase of kids, because it's more about how do I look, how many likes I get, and it's traveling, right? So
I
that's
think one
my
of the scariest. I'm a single guy. I don't think I'll have kids for many years, but it's one of the scariest things of social media where I feel like when a person bases their identity based on their reception by other people. Like I think it's an unhealthy. Like the moment you define your worth in terms of someone else's definition, it goes
yeah.
downhill pretty fast.
You're 100% right, and you need to be very mature to understand it because it's even me, right? For example, I was interviewed today in one of the biggest newsletters here in Europe, right? And I share it online, and I get a bunch of likes, and people say, "Wow, and amazing," etc. That could be wow, that's meaningful, but maybe it's not meaningful, right? So yeah, it's a tough balance. I think it's a tough balance. I know a lot of people that are very famous and get tons of like, but don't close the month in terms of salary, etc. So it's a very balancing things. There is the culture of a person buying a very very expensive car that he cannot afford, but it looks great and it photos great and people say like and etc. So
Right.
uh, uh,
It feels a lot of bad decisions, that's for sure.
yeah, I think that we need to understand that first of all we need to get our confidence and our from home, from our ground, be more grounded, understand, don't be so um, manipulated, if you will, about what's going on in the outside world, because a lot of the time it's just it's not real, right? We see a massive growth of depression as more people use the web in general. Um, so it's a fight that we need to educate the young people and also, do ourselves with technology and others. For example, in Affogata, we try to really make the world a bit better by understanding what's true and what's not, helping companies better, get the needs of their customers. I'll give you just one example that is very close to my heart. So we are working with a direct-to-consumer company that sells the shifts a product online, and a very old lady tried to contact support, but she doesn't know exactly what to do. So she wrote a letter by hand and said, "Listen, I bought this and this and this, and it doesn't work, and no one responds to me, and I don't know what to do, and I don't see, etc." And said it as a letter, and the letter came, and people saw it, right? And it was very moving because it was actual person that trying to say, "Help me, I don't know what to do." Uh, and that's, I think, very meaningful, and that's kind of in a way what we want to do for those kind of people, the voiceless, to have a voice and to impact. Um,
That's a beautiful narrative.
yeah, I was very. I also saw the letter, so it was very personal.
I so it's very so it reminds me of this one time where in another business I work on, a consumer, one of our clients was just one of our customer was just so happy that they send us a pair of custom shoes, and I'm like, dang,
Wow.
like we can't all wear this one shoe, but it just sends a meaningful message when someone sends you something physical nowadays, since we're so used to hundreds, if not thousands, of emails, but very few physical letters.
Yeah,
And most of
100%.
the ones I get in the mail are like advertisements for like coupons or whatever.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think that goes a long way to do the extra effort. For example, when with our management team, we started working with the method of objectives and key results. So we bought the book, and I bought the physical book. I want an audio ball. No, let's buy the book. And I wrote something nice for each person with a signature and gave it to him. And I think it goes a long way, even if people actually don't read the book but listen to the audio. I think it's meaningful to see something physical. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So the last question I generally like to ask all of our guests is, what's the best way our viewers can get in touch with them?
Yeah, so I can share my email. I think that will work best. It's Sharel at Affogata.com. We're always looking to meet amazing people, entrepreneurs, developers, people that knows the market. We're looking to interact with great talent and build relationship with great people. So feel free. We are very happy to meet and talk with anyone.